We are going to start while there's a little bit of gusting snow outside in the geothermal field here. We can begin. Welcome everyone to Short History of the World, our second class of this semester. And we are really going to begin with the whole story today. With where we begin, and I'm going to be delivering a short lecture momentarily that's going to help us get through about 13 billion years or so from the Big Bang up into the beginning of what we call the Great Divergence, which is when our early primate ancestors began to branch off, and that would lead to the Homo sapien line, which is us. And I'll show you all of that shortly. But first, I just want to, as always, welcome everybody. And there is something I should say right now, but it will come up a little bit later too. I think you will like this, but I need to kind of explain that. Last week, when we had our class, did I actually give participation marks to students who came and sat on the couches? Did I do that? Yeah, did I actually give? So I gave participation marks to the person who did the notes, but I didn't to those on the couches. So I don't think I did, because I need to say something right off the bat. Okay, about this classroom. We are creating something really new in education here, we think. And we think that what we're trying to do is give you the chance to like being in a classroom, as opposed to feeling like it's an effort to come to school. And part of that is helping you to adjust to the idea that we're doing a multimedia class, as you can see, where we're on YouTube, we record this, you have all that choice. But the really critical thing for this class to work, if it's going to fly, and we're going to be able to change education and even make history in education, which is I think we can do, is we have to get the students into this center here and allow them, when they come into the classroom, to think that this is a place where you're going to interact, as opposed to a place where you kind of go to the margins and you kind of disappear into a classroom. And I think, and I worry, that what we're up against in education right now is that I may be wrong, but I've noticed that almost in every single class that I do, the students walk into the room and they seem to default to the back of the room. Everybody goes like around the edges, like they don't really want to be here. And so I just want to say for now, okay, that I'm going to make this kind of worth your while today. I'm actually going to give you marks for coming and sitting here, but I know that this is maybe not something you want to do. So here's what I'm going to do, okay? For those of you who do not want to be in the couches interacting or even being seen by other students online, you can either leave or you can stay around the edges. And that's not a problem. But for those of you who would like to really interact, I'm going to actually say to you, if you come and sit on the couches, you will get 5 out of 5, 2.5% for participating. But if you don't want to do that and you want to stay around the edges, then I will begin to recalibrate in terms of how I'm going to teach this particular class. And so let's just take this really slowly. Right now, everybody online and in the recording, remember there are 111 students registered in this course, so a lot of them are watching the recordings and commenting on things. I just want to, I'm not going to show anybody for now, it's just me standing here, and it's my audio, okay? I just want to see if this is going to work. You have a choice right now. If you would like to come and sit on the couches, get the 2.5%, 5 out of 5, you can right now. If not, let me just see what happens, okay? And see if that's going to help. If not, then I will adjust with this class and maybe even ask you why you don't want to be coming in and why you want to be sort of here but not here. Okay? And that's okay. Okay, let's try. I don't know if it's because you don't like it or because you're used to a type of classroom where you kind of disappear into your devices and you sit. Great. Okay. Good. So I don't know. I'm taking this excellent. Okay. Are you okay with when we start? It's going to get pretty interactive. Even though I'm going to lecture, it's going to be. You got a sense of it last week, but it's going to really get more interactive there. Are you good with that? Okay. Good. I'm taking this slowly. For the other students who are out there, I'm not going to do anything more, okay? I'm going to, for whatever reason, accept that you're comfortable there. And so I want you to know that you're always welcome. You will always be honored when you're in this nucleus, and that your voice and what you have to say is really, really important. And if you feel uncomfortable doing that, then I would ask you to reflect on that when you leave the room today and ask yourself, just ask, why am I coming in person to a classroom, but I'm not actually participating? Why am I doing that? And if you feel like you want to talk to me about that privately, please do, okay? Because I want to help you. And part of what we do in this class is something called the Essential Employability Skills. If you've read the course outline, which you probably haven't read all of it, it's pretty detailed. Part of what I try to teach in this class is communication skills too. So there's that part of it, employability skills that you're trying to learn. And so I've designed this not just to explore history with you and really help you with that, but ultimately to prepare you for a world where you're going to have to be doing a lot of communicating with people. Okay, so anyways, I'm available always on email. If you want to reach me, talk to me. But great, we've got at least our nucleus going here, protons and neutrons, and then there are the electrons flying out there. Okay, that's how an atom works. Okay, great. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put the camera back over here so I can let the others know that we're starting to get some people here, okay? And that's the idea that you can see on YouTube right now. That's the video conference view, but I'll show you what we see on YouTube and then we'll get going here. You can see that in many ways, this class is about the recording. And I know it might seem strange to you, but that's the vision for this classroom, in a way that we're creating a classroom that's a bit like a television studio at the same time. So people come in and they have a class together, but then there are all those other people who are watching later, and so they need to feel like you're here and we interact. Okay, does that make sense? That's kind of the vision of what we're trying to do with tech. So does anybody have any questions about this or anything that I've just said? Because the next thing I'm going to do is get you to put your names on board over there and then come back, and we're going to do a little bit of reviewing. I need to get a note taker, and I also need to get another person today to do something with their camera on their cell phone. But anyways, we'll take it step by step. So first, can you put your names over there on board? Just get up, come back to the couches. Great, everybody. We can put that and we can see who's on board. And thank you for your patience. They are all going over there. Malagai, I think, has already put his. Let me come back here and I can talk to you a little bit in the Cosmos before we start. And you should see me here momentarily. That will be great on YouTube. Okay, so everybody in the cosmos right now has put their names into the live chat. You're there. We have a good turnout in the cosmos. And in a moment, what we're going to do is just make sure we have everything set up here in the global classroom. And then I'm going to do a little review. And then I'm going to start with a lecture. And then we're going to have an activity all around creation today. Get ready for a big idea around how everything was created, how everything started. But that's coming, okay? Thank you, everybody. So, in the cosmos right now, does anybody have any questions that they would like to put into the live chat while we're just waiting for on board to get completed here? Benison, Ruzan Khan, Ayush, Carol, you should see me now, right? So all of that is good. And is there anything on your minds in the live chat? Let me just see. Let me try and see if I can engage on a microphone. Here's what I'm going to do. Right now, there's a little bit of reverb. I can correct that later. For those of you in the cosmos, just now I have given participation marks to those who have come onto the couch today. Okay. In the same way, I'm going to give participation marks to anybody who jumps on their microphone right now. Let's see what happens.
Hi.
I am.
Hi.
Ooh. Good. Just a second. Who was the first person who jumped on the microphone?
I don't know. It was me or something.
Okay. I'll come back to you a little bit later, but I have to just mute this speaker here. We're having a little trouble, but excellent. I just want to establish that I am prepared for the time being as a way of encouraging students and helping them to participate more in this experiment in education, to be giving some participation marks to students when they come to the couches or they jump on their microphones or even share their video. Okay, so excellent. So we have our onboard done, and now we have to sense who did the notes last week. Who got the 5 last week for doing the notes on the smartboard? Was it, what's your name? Hamish, okay. Hamish did the notes, so it's not going to be Hamish today, okay? Way to go, though. Thank you for that. And the 5 is there. You got it. So now we have to pick our scribe today, who's going to do the notes and get, of course, the 5 out of 5. So Malachi, just a second. Let me just check and see. How about one of you guys? Do you feel comfortable? No? No? Okay. Malachi, go ahead. And excellent. Malachi's going to go do the notes. Do you know how to move the...
It's the bottom right corner.
Yeah, exactly. The 2 little lines, and just put your finger on that. Okay, the pen is over there. Excellent, because we're going to start something today that is really critical when we talk about short history of the world, and that is what we call in history speak chronology, or the timeline, the master timeline. So we're going to be starting the story today at the beginning, and we're going to be advancing chronologically through important breakthroughs and eras in the story of humanity. So we need to get dates down that are critical. So Malachi, could you just write down right now timeline? And we are about to begin officially. In terms of the camera part, I am going to leave this to later when we do the activity, but students have asked, watching the recording, why can't they see the whole screen, in this room? Well, if all the tech were working, they would be seeing it on that camera back there, but that's not working right now. I'm using my webcam anyways. It's a big workaround. So I did something earlier this week in my global leader class in Humanities Destinies. Another student volunteered to receive full participation marks, and what they did is they joined the class from their cell phone and they used their camera on their cell phone to get that big view. So not only that, but when we did the take-up with the student at the smartboard, the student having the camera was like the, handheld camera, city news type of thing, standing right there with the person at the smartboard, filming them, and the person at the smartboard was talking to the camera, like a weatherman or a weatherwoman, with the smartboard talking to the camera. It looked great. So, again, I just want to reiterate that participation marks are being given in this class to things around production that help this class become something that everybody can join outside, inside, and make it more relevant to the tech that you use today, okay? We'll do that later when we get into the activity. I think we should begin the real story. Unless you have any questions about anything, you're always free to ask. But for now, you can see the view up there. It's on YouTube. Can't see anybody here, but we might hear you. So Malagai is ready. Well, you don't have to write anything right now, but I hoped today that I would have some time to talk about some history that has just been made in Canadian and world politics, as in our Prime Minister's appearance at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. I'm going to leave that because I really want to get our story moving, but I need to inform all of you, unless you are not fully aware, that we're living through history right now in Canada in a very significant way. I touched on this, I think, last week, but not to the extent that I would like to a little bit later. Is anybody prepared to tell us what they think the history is that's being made right now in Canada in terms of the rest of the world? What's your name? Ryden. Yeah, Ryden Reese or Brooks, yeah, Bryden. Please go ahead. Yeah.
I'm guessing.
Yes.
Say trade between China and Mexico.
You're on it. You've come to the rink, but you're not on the ice yet. Okay, or you've come to the field, but you're not on come to the diamond. You're not on the field. Essentially, for those of you who may not have heard, it's Ryan. Sorry, Ryden. Yeah, Ryden Brooks. Yeah, I remember now, because the microphone is still on me. Ryden mentioned that some history now is being made in terms of the relations in trade with China and Mexico and Canada. And I said that there's some truth to that. He's close, but he's not bullseye. And the bullseye is this. I don't know how to put this any other way except to say that in the modern world that has been led very often by the United States, that is fundamentally changing now. And the world is now moving away from the United States. And that's what the United States wants. Essentially, what has happened is that our Prime Minister gave a speech in Switzerland earlier this week, the World Economic Forum, which is the gathering of business and political and cultural leaders. And he said something that no leader has yet said, but many are feeling. And I think I should just spend a couple of minutes to explain this so I can answer Ryden, and then we will move on, okay? But if history is being made, we need to address this now. The story I'm going to be telling you is all about history that has happened and why that's so important for understanding our world today, about the forces that shape our world today. But my ultimate aim is always to make you appreciate history and understand when you see history happening around you, you will be able to understand more what's going on, and that you have a deeper appreciation for even your own ordinary lives too when you understand history better. The history that's being made right now is that our Prime Minister, when he spoke in Davos, Switzerland, he basically said that the United States is no longer a friend to anybody, really. That what the United States has become is a predatory empire that is seeking to acquire more land, more money, and more power. And that Canada, who has been the long-time friend, we've had a hugely close relationship, Canada and the United States, because of our shared, undefended border. And it goes all the way back to the beginning of this country. We have been close. We've established a very deep trade relationship. 75% of what we manufacture in Canada goes to the United States, where it becomes products that are bought there. But with the rise of a new force in the United States that goes beyond Donald Trump, this is a force that we're going to have to live with for many years to come. The force is this. The United States has declared that all that matters is the United States first everywhere. And if it wants a country like Venezuela, if it wants Greenland, which it's moving for, if it wants Canada, which it said it would like to annex, it will go for it. And it has the largest military in the world. And as we saw in Venezuela with recently the American, it was a brilliant military maneuver, tactically speaking, to go into a country and just grab the president and his wife and bring them back. I mean, nobody's discounting, from a military standpoint, the movie of how the United States went in, you know, didn't suffer any losses, killed, I don't know, 50 or 60 Venezuelans at the same time, grabbed the president, and now not only does it have the power there, but it has the oil that it really wants in Venezuela. We're seeing the future of the United States in terms of its predatory nature now. And so Mark Carney, our Prime Minister, basically said, we're not transitioning to a new world, folks. The old world is broken. The old world order in which the United States was some kind of beacon of freedom and friendliness to the rest of the world is done. And what's happening is we in Canada, a smaller country, have to band together with other smaller countries and form a bloc, a bigger bloc, so that we can defend ourselves, so that we don't have to go to the United States, you know, begging and bringing gifts to Donald Trump like he's some kind of emperor. You know, we call that tribute in Hunger Games. Ever you see Hunger Games? We've got to change. The world is changing how it deals with the United States. It is tremendous history that's unfolding. And your future is going to be very much based on how you're going to be adjusting to this, at least when you look at politics and you look at economy and you look at even the military. And just finally, I will say it was remarkable this week to read in the Globe and Mail something I've started to think about myself in the last few months, when I would imagine what it would be like sitting in a food court in Scarborough and in Oshawa, and what I see instead of security guards are American troops. And I thought, that's just ridiculous. It's unthinkable. This week we learned as an exclusive report from the Globe and Mail that the Canadian military has started to practice maneuvers, or at least conceptually prepare for the idea that the United States may invade. I know that sounds crazy and unthinkable. As you will see in this course this semester, we were invaded by the United States before. It's called the War of 1812, and we fought for 2 years, and we pushed them back with the help of the Indigenous peoples in Canada. They came all the way here. They came to Toronto. They came to the walls around Quebec City, and we pushed them back. And then we went in and we burned down the White House. So there has been war. Do I think we will be in a state of war with the United States? No. But anything's possible right now with Donald Trump and this movement in the United States that has become extremely suspicious and mistrustful and almost hateful of the rest of the world. It's very dark in some ways. But so, in what I just said about this history making time, have I just depressed some of you? Have I unsettled some of you? Do you think I'm even wrong in what I've just said? Let's hear for a second, okay? And because of the audio today, I can't bring in the Cosmos the way I would like, but you will get your participation marks, so it's going to depend completely on our nucleus here. So let's see. Bryden, I guess I'll go default for a while, all right? But please do not in any way be afraid, quite the opposite. Your voice, your view matters more than mine, okay? Ryden? What do you think of what I've just said about history happening? Our Prime Minister's speech, and you think it's crazy?
It's different. I wouldn't say crazy. I think it's good that we're gaining a little bit of independence from the United States.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it.
I'm pretty sure. I don't know much about politics
Yes.
or global trade, but from what I heard, I'm pretty sure we're making more money as far as oil dealing with China than we were with US.
We just might be. We don't know yet, but our Prime Minister has also been in China recently to develop new relations with them so that we can be shipping our oil from Alberta with a new pipeline all the way across the Pacific Ocean. So things are changing. All I will say, by way of transitioning now to our story, let me start because we need to get into things, and I've got the Bible today to begin with, or at least one kind of scriptures, okay? If there's one force that's going to emerge in the story this semester that you're going to find really interesting, it's called evolution. It's called change. So could you write this down, Malachi? Just be prepared for an incredible story about change on planet Earth. And when we talk about the story of humanity, short history of the world, we're talking about a short story, okay? This is, in many ways, my story that I'm going to tell you. It's so big in terms of the totality of what's been happening on planet Earth that no one person can tell the whole story. This is a selective story based on my research, based on my historical understanding and experience and knowledge. And any person who loves history, any historian, will tell you that in the word history, there's a very important word called story. This is just a story, but it's based on very good scientific and scholarly research. And this is the story of humanity on planet Earth. Now, when we start to think about this story, a short history of the world, a story of humanity, we are looking at these chapters. And in a moment, we're going to start with the very beginning, as far as we know, and we're going to start our timeline then, okay? And then when you hear dates, Malachi, that are significant, we'll tell you. You can also write down your own, too, okay? So you'll get used to this, okay? The chapters are as follows. Where we begin is this week, the ascent of humanity, civilization, awakenings of power, spells of our God kings, a greater world, the conquest, freedom's power, humanity's stain, the 20th century, and evolution. And each week is a new chapter. And each week I will give a brief lecture, and then we're going to have a question or something that we're going to work on together. as a group, and then we're going to get the notes going, and then we will take that up. So today it's all about where we begin. Where does this story of humanity really begin? Well, in a moment, we're going to go to a remarkable piece of research done by scientists and scholars at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where they have created a video, physicists there and cosmologists, on what they believe they have simulated, what we think happened with something that we call the Big Bang, 13.7 billion years ago. So can you just write that down now? When we talk about the beginning in this story, we're going to go back to 13.7 billion years ago. Now, we will get to that in a moment. It has come up in the discussion posts, for the first discussion post, from some of the asynchronous students who asked, well, what kind of history really are you going to be telling, Lon? It sounds interesting, but you talked about science and technology and religion last week, and you had a great discussion, but are you going to be covering the wars? You know, the First World War, the Second World War, you're going to talk about the Roman Empire, the Greek Empire, the rise of the Islamic world and early societies, and where is all that going to fit in, all that history that we're hoping we would get? And that's coming. But I'm going to be delivering this chronologically through time, so you can see the progression of what's been happening on planet Earth. And when we get to civilization in week, not next week, but the week after, that's the starting line, really, of the big story of human civilization 10,000 years ago. Civilization only began on planet Earth, as far as we know, just 10,000 years ago. So the other thing that you're going to start to understand in this course is your conception of history has been very narrow. It's been based on either a particular century, a particular time period, a particular religion, a particular society, but you've never had the story, the human story of what's been happening on planet Earth. You will in this class in a very introductory way, and it's because we can tell it now. We have the information increasingly. So for those of you who are hoping to learn about all those great empires, you will. But first we have to set the stage about our planet and how all of this began to create the kind of foundation for the rise of humans on planet Earth. And that's what I'm going to do today, is I'm going to take you from the very beginning up to when humans really started to take their present shape, okay? Now, one of the things that I will be bringing to these lectures is what Isaac Newton, one of our great scientists in human history, the one who began to understand the force of gravity, the one who we tell the story of, you know, the apple falling from the tree, and he began to witness a force in nature that pulls things down to earth, and he eventually began to see that there's a gravitational force. There are these giants. They're the world historians that I will be referring to throughout the course. People from my own studies over the years, people from my library, people from my own background in history, and you're going to get a lot of different names and interesting scholars. And one of them is this person, and his name is David Christian. David Christian is one of many scholars that I will be bringing to this course, but he has created this new way of looking at history called Big History, which is he looks at the whole planet and the whole human race. And he has been a pioneer in this field. And he wrote a book called Maps of Time. He also wrote a book called A Short History of Humanity. And we even have a course at this college just on big history with David Christian. He's one of many that I will be talking about. And I just want to acknowledge him at the beginning because he's so important. David Christian has asked, a very important question, and I want to get this down into the timeline. And it's a question that you might have asked when you were a child and you began to think of the big picture, like what's happening in the world around me. And you might have even lay down on a summer's day on a hill, looking up at the big blue sky, and you start to wonder, not quite in these words, but the feeling would be there. What is the totality of this? What's the big picture? What's going on here? What's the totality of my existence? That's the question that David Christian has asked in his books. It's a wonderful question. And I just want to make sure that as I ask this now, what is the totality of my existence? Can I just have a show of hands? Have you ever sort of asked that question in some form or another? You know, maybe when you were a child and, yeah, exactly. Okay. That sense of wonder and curiosity, like, what's the big picture? Well, that sense of wonder and curiosity about who we are, what we're a part of, what is intended for us, the human race, is highly philosophical. Philosophy will be an undercurrent in this course through many other disciplines like religion and science and freedom and evolution, exploration. But this question, where do we come from, has often been asked by humans right from the beginning, when we began to become conscious, truly conscious, and our religions, our different cultures, all have what are called creation myths. Can you write that down, please? Creation myths. Now, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to begin to roar through very quickly the creation story or the creation myth that science gives us today, because science is very advanced in our time. Science is the force of humans with their brains trying to understand what's happening in nature. Humans are different than any other creatures on the planet for many reasons we can get into. But one thing we don't want to be is we don't want to be helpless before nature. We don't want to be at the mercy of nature's extraordinary forces, whether they are floods, storms, volcanoes, tectonic plates coming together, earthquakes. We humans want answers. We want a sense of what exactly is our purpose here, who is behind this, so that we feel we are more in control here. We don't want to be helpless. What you're going to do in your activity in about 20 minutes to 30 minutes when I'm done is all of you are going to work together and you're going to look at different creation myths from different religions and different societies. It could be the Buddhist creation myth. It could be the Islamic creation myth from the scriptures. It could be the Hindu creation myth, the Sikh creation myth, the Mohawk or Ojibwe creation myth. We're going to kind of collect creation myths together and understand how have we looked at our creation from different perspectives. But what I'm going to tell you right now is the one that we all must know. It's the story from science, because that's the modern story. That's the story where we have the most proof. But in this story of where we come from, there are two great intellectual forces that we humans have brought to planet Earth. Two great intellectual forces. There's the force of science, where we humans go in and we try to understand what exactly is happening in nature. And then there's the force of religion, where all those questions we don't know, we imagine. we wonder, we think, and we have so many different religions, so many different ways of viewing our creation. It's beautiful. So, before I show you this great story from science, where the Massachusetts Institute of Technology researchers have actually simulated what it looked like 13 billion or so years ago when we had this event called the Big Bang that I will tell you about, I need to bring in religion. See, today when we look at where we come from, we're going to look at those two sides of it. Science and religion, or religion meaning culture, how our different cultures view, because religion is a creation from human culture. That may be very hard for those who are religious to accept. I'm just going to move on and explain something. I'm not going to get into a debate over whose God or whose gods are more important or which religion has the answer. But let me take a question, because this is good. We already have... Go ahead, please.
So there is no proof of the Big Bang Theory. All this scientific research is based off it. What?
I'm going to show you the proof today. So get ready, yes. Yeah, get ready, okay? Yeah. Just curious, I'm so glad you brought this up. Who told you there's no proof? You don't have to answer it, okay? I don't want to make anybody uncomfortable, okay? However, I'm not going to be shying away from making you think. And I would just like you to, if you're not prepared to tell us where you got that information, you don't have to, okay, in any way. But if you want to, you can. Just be prepared that I may show you things that you may never have seen before, okay? So we've just had a student say, and I'm so glad the student said it, that yes, there is this thing he's heard of called the Big Bang, but he said there's no proof for it. And I just said, I'm going to show you some proof today. Okay? So, first, let's go back to not science and not the proof, but a religion. Okay? Now, when we look at where we come from, how we got here, what we're supposed to be doing here, in this world today, we have 8 billion people on planet Earth, 8 billion humans, okay, spread out over about 196, 197 independent sovereign nations that sit on the United Nations. And in those 8 billion, we have about 1.5 billion who follow a religion called Islam. We have about 2.5 billion who follow a religion called Christianity. And we have a few 100 million who follow a religion called Judaism. Why do I mention those three? Because those are the three monotheistic religions. In other words, they are the religions on planet Earth of humans that believe only in one God. There are other religions. There's Hinduism, Buddhism, Sikhism, and indigenous tribal creation stories. And they have multiple gods, incredibly poetic and beautiful stories of how we got here. But what I'm going to read you is the conventional stuff. Okay, this is the story from the Holy Scriptures, what we call the Old Testament, or among Jews, the Torah. And in this, there's also the New Testament. That's the testament of the Christians. Because when we look at the monotheistic religions, the humans who invented this idea of one God, they all believe in one God, not multiple gods. The first one who said that there is a single God was Abraham. He was a prophet, and he is considered a prophet by all the monotheistic religions. The Jews, the Muslims, and the Christians. So what I'm going to read you is from Genesis. And some of you are familiar with this because there will be among this population right now Jews, Christians, and Muslims. And that forms about, 3 billion, 3.5 billion of the 8 billion people on planet Earth. So the people who follow the monotheistic religions, they form a huge block on planet Earth. And they believe in this, if they're the real believers. Okay? Genesis. This is how it began. For those of you who are Hindu, or Sikh, or Buddhist, or anything else, forgive me for not talking about your faith now, but you'll have a chance in our activity to look at the creation myths. But diversity is what matters in this class, respecting all these different views. Here it is from Genesis. Where do we come from? Well, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And now the earth was unformed and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God hovered over the face of the waters, and God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light, and it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness, and God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning one day, and God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters," meaning the stars. Well, you're going to see in a moment what stars really are. They're gas, and they come from the Big Bang. But isn't it interesting? Before there was ever science, we're already thinking about the stars coming first, and God made the firmament, the stars and the planets, and God called the firmament heaven. Well, this was essentially a story that we began to tell around 5,000 years ago. It was told orally from generation to generation until we had the written word, and then we began to write it down. And it will become the basis for the Jews, the Christians, and the Muslims. Now, if any of you watched the video that I posted as a resource in the first class folder called Earthrise, did any of you have a chance to watch or click on it? I didn't even direct you to it, so I can just tell you that that is the little documentary that was made of the 3 astronauts, American astronauts in 1968, who saw the Earth whole for the first time. It was a remarkable moment in human history. And last week I had that going a little bit, the video, and you saw it, but I didn't really talk about it at length. The reason I want you to think about that, and perhaps even reconnect with that video after today's class, is because those 3 astronauts, when they went into space 6 months before we landed on the moon, and they orbited around the moon, and they saw the planet Earth sort of over the horizon of the moon, rising, called Earthrise. This moment was being captured live on television on Christmas morning in 1968. I even remember this as a 6-year-old watching on a black and white television at home. This moment when we were seeing live from space the planet. The astronauts were so moved that on live television in front of the whole world, they read exactly that passage, Genesis. They were so moved by what they were seeing that they became deeply spiritual, and they started to think of how they can express that feeling of what they're seeing, the whole planet for the first time. A human is seeing it, taking a picture of it. When we begin to engage with nature at this large scale, we do awaken a sense of great wonder in the human being. And for those of you who are deeply religious and believe what I just said, you're going to even like what I'm about to say even more. The scientific story I'm about to show you, beginning with the MIT video and the proof that I can present to you from science of how things have been evolving in the cosmos over billions of years, is not the complete story. It's only what we know at this point. Humans have a remarkable capacity to want to know. And the religious stories of our creation, as you will see from all the different creation myths, are wonderful in showing us the human imagination, really trying to come to grips with this idea that we're part of something much, much bigger. And we've grown out of that. And so I think religion and those stories have a great place in us trying to understand what's been going on planet Earth. Who are we? What's intended for us? What have we been doing down there with all these civilizations and societies? And that is something that you're going to be grappling with through the whole semester as you begin to meet some amazing figures in history. So let's now start looking at the science story, the real story that we believe happened. For those of you in the cosmos, I'm going to direct you to a video. I'm going to run it here, but I can't, oh, actually I can put the link in for you. Here it is. I'm going to run it, but first I'll do it here. I'd like you, all of you in the cosmos, to please go ahead and watch that video now on your own. It's called The Illustrious Simulation. Okay? So if there's any confusion there, just please put your comment in the live chat. But now I'm going to run this for the students here, and I'm going to dim the lights, and I'm going to put the curtains down, and you're going to watch a picture simulated of how things began to evolve over billions of years and how they began. And then we will talk about this afterwards, and I will help the student understand some of the proof here as well. The one thing I would say as you watch this is look for this thing called redshift. Do you know what redshift is? Look for this thing called redshift, okay? But we will talk some more, okay? So everybody go ahead online, start watching the video, and I'm gonna come back here. And we're going to go through billions of years. And Malagai, could you do me a favor now? Over there is the curtain, the blinds. You see that little panel there? Just on your right. Keep going. Keep going. The little panel. There you go. Open it. And you see the bottom. Just put your finger on that. Press it. And there we go. Here comes the blind. Okay. Everybody ready? This is amazing simulation, and I want to get the audio up for you, and I'm going to do this, I'll leave it like this for now. When this is over, I will explain about the gas, okay? But just watch this and we will continue. Turn the lights on. We're going to talk about this because I'm sure you have some questions. We're going to talk about this because I'm sure you have some questions. Okay. Who's that idiot talking? I'm going to get rid of his voice. Okay. So let's stop this and come back to our to compute the laws of nature. Okay. So, first, before we move on, And I explain a few more things, and then we're going to start with our creation myths and understand more of how nature began. In the cosmos, did all of you have a chance to watch the video? Just go ahead and put yes or no. I just want to make sure. Excellent, excellent. Good, it's working, it's working. Everybody's on the same page. So what was happening here? What did the MIT team try to show us in this simulation? Well, essentially, here's some important information. And I want to make sure that for those of you who think that there should be more proof, I need to say something about a fact. This is really, really important stuff. So it's not only important for talking about history and our origins, it's also important when we talk about the world today, because it is quite common for all of us to be online today and see a lot of information that is not true. It's called misinformation, or weaponized information. It's called disinformation. And you may be rightly suspicious of anything today that is given as information, because we're living at a time when there's so much fake stuff. There's even artificial life, artificial humans almost, robots. What's real, what isn't? Deep fakes, small fakes. So I would like to say something almost revolutionary for some of you, and I may be wrong. There is a thing really in this world called a fact. A universally agreed upon piece of information by everybody. Almost everybody, except those who still believe for one reason or another that they're absolutely convinced that the world is flat, or that we never landed on the moon, or that 9/11 was a hoax. There are always going to be people who are suspicious of everything. We call them the nihilists. There's even a word for that. People who don't believe anything that you say. They question everything. We're going to put that aside for a moment and accept that among the 8 billion humans on planet Earth and the many in here, we have so many different views, and there are people who are stubborn, no matter what. I'm sure you know one or two of them yourself. So what is a fact? A fact is something in which we have a method called the scientific method that helps us to determine that something actually happened. And here's what we know that's factual from science. So let me help you, okay? How many of you are familiar with what's called the periodic table of elements? The periodic table of elements, okay? What's number one element? Hydrogen. What's number two? Helium. Exactly. Hydrogen and helium, they are gas. Hydrogen and helium were the first gases that came out of what we call the Big Bang. But the Big Bang isn't really a bang. That's a kind of dramatic way of describing that something came out of nothing. Now, this may be a hard thing for you to think about. The Greeks, as we will see when we go to the great Greek civilization and the Mediterranean, and we look at the Greek Empire and then the Roman Empire, and believe me, I'm going to get to all of those incredible stories, but we have to understand nature first. Because we are a growth. We've emerged from nature, from the soil of nature. And the reason that I'm explaining nature more now is because, guess what? We're living at the time in history, the 21st century, when we humans are changing nature. We are changing the climate. We are changing the human body. We are changing the human brain. We are leaving planet Earth and going to other parts of the solar system. We are living at the time when we humans are beginning to change nature. So what is nature? Does this make sense? Does this feel weird, like I'm way out there? Or do you understand why I might say that we humans are beginning to change nature? Do you see that in the climate? How the climate has been changing from our civilization, creating a lot of waste? Do you see that, for example, in artificial intelligence? That we have open AI and entrepreneurs and innovators now who are creating a new form of intelligence that is faster than we humans? That's not nature. That's human creation. Does this make sense? I need to stop. I'm not sure. I may be looking at the wrong. I know you're listening, which is great. If you feel you don't understand, or you don't even agree and you're insulted by what I've said, or you have something you want clarification on, please ask. I feel, as you know, very passionately, and I include myself among this, that we humans are not that smart yet. We've created all these great machines, but spiritually and morally, inside, we haven't grown much. It's like we're children with like big, powerful toys, but we haven't grown up to understand the world in which we really live. So I feel, and I look at myself, I'm kind of stupid. I need to learn more. And what I'm trying to introduce you to is what I know and what I've learned. May I ask you something? Why are you all so quiet? This is the most quiet bunch I've had this semester, and I'm just not sure what's going on. So it started last week, and usually there are students that jump in and I have to stop them, So could somebody tell me something online, anywhere?
I have a question.
Yes, Ryden. What do you...
How do we know that hydrogen and helium were the first two gases?
How do we know that?
Yeah.
Very, very good question. Okay, periodic table of elements. Well, we have what's called particle science, Ryden. So every bit of matter in the world, whether it's gas, water, or a hard thing, that's called matter. Humans learned in the last couple of hundred years in particular that matter is made up of even smaller things called subatomic particles. So hydrogen is made up of atoms. But in the atoms, we have even smaller things. The nucleus of the atom is a proton and a neutron. And then around that, and we just began to see this in the last 100 years, it's called an electron. And when we started to see the electron and capture it, we started to get modern electronics. That's why your phone, and that's why your laptop, and that's why your machines and everything work so fast, because we have electrons in them, in what's called transistors. So we know that hydrogen and helium are that old because we can date those subatomic particles that emerged early on. And we can do that, Bryden, through something very, very significant. In the video, you saw what's called redshift. Remember I said, look for this thing called redshift, and it was showing you through that redshift was changing. What that means is light is formed by a particle called a photon. Just the way we have atoms, hydrogen, helium, or all the elements in the periodic table that have atoms and subatomic particles in them, then there's this other group of particles called photons. And we can actually date photons and how old the light is or how new the light is by the degradation of the quality of the light. It's called redshift. So what you were looking at there was a simulation of how 13.7 billion years ago or so, photons, light began to appear. because we have been able to see that there is light, photons moving through the atmosphere around us that are 13 billion to 13.5 billion years old. Their redshift has been, the light has been getting weaker and weaker and weaker as the light has been traveling at light speed through the cosmos. So we can make this deduction that light that now is so weak, we've picked it up with the telescope, that tiny bit of light, 13 billion years ago, if you track it back, that light was super, 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 super bright. Where did that brightness come from at that time? Well, here's where the religious view helped. We don't know. Even Einstein said, Albert Einstein, I can't tell you where or why that energy began, why those particles emerged. But David Christian has said in his research that he has seen in his research that particles, subatomic particles, can just accidentally pop in to nothing and start to grow. We don't know why, but they do. Now, I'm going to stop because I love your question. Am I confusing you or am I clarifying?
I think I understand what you're saying.
Go on, but keep asking, because for me as a professor, all I care about is that you understand something that is extremely complex, our lives. And most of us don't really want to know. Okay, could you come in? Come into the nucleus? And we can, excellent. What's your name?
Ramal.
Ramal. Lovely, Ramal. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. We've got courage. Ryden and Ramal, but all of you have courage too. You're just listening, okay? And what's your name again? Thomas, yeah, and Hamish, okay. So let's get Ramal. I want to show everybody here. There is Ramal. Okay, and I'm even going to do this so we can begin. Okay, so now this is what they see. And we're going to see if this class could really, really work. It's not quite. We're the Leafs before a big game. We're in the locker room. And we're going to figure out how the hell are we going to get the cup after all these years of breaking everybody's hearts. We have a little huddle. But instead of talking about how we're going to win the game, we're going to talk about bigger stuff like, what is this thing called life and the world and humanity, and why was Julius Caesar so respected if he really was an epileptic? He was. We have it from Plutarch, the Roman historian. He was an epileptic, but he was brilliant. And why did Alexander the Great drink himself to death? And, he was in the early 30s. And, why did Ashoka, the great Indian prince, decide that he would renounce violence? Anyways, let's get back to things, okay? Ramal? So it's okay to challenge me, and it's anything. We're going to figure this out. We need to understand the Big Bang, okay? This is what science tells us has happened and will lead to us. Then we're going to do creation myths, all right? Go ahead.
So in terms of the Big Bang Theory, sure, the redshift and Hubble's law explains the expansion of the universe, but just because the universe is expanding does not explain where it started from. Oh, so the Big Bang Theory states that it was a singularity or a singular point with an infinite amount of energy stored in there, and then one day.
Yes.
So, how do we know there was a singular point and just nothing else when it all started?
If it's expanding outward in any sort of way, there has to be a point where it comes from. It's the same way of saying, how do we know you exist? Because we don't know your parents. If that kind of makes sense. Like, if we don't know exactly where you came from, how, like, we know you exist because we exist. So there has to be a point where we begin, and if we're expanding outward, there's a middle point.
Right, but the Big Bang Theory states that it was a point of energy. How do we know? How do we know that it was just a point? Like, I get that it has to come from somewhere, but how can you just state that it was just a dot, like literally a dot of energy and nothing else? What is this nothingness?
Well, what we can say is that when we look at the photon example that I gave you and redshift, that when light is seen now and is very weak, and we know that light has been traveling at light speed, and we can determine from that degraded light how old that light, that point of light is, we can then rewind and say, well, if that light is that old, then as it goes back in time, it would have been brighter and brighter and brighter. It came from a place that was very, very, very bright, but that over time it degraded. It's like uranium. You know how we date rocks? No, carbon is only in living things, Ramon. Uranium is how we date inanimate things. We have animate things in life, that's alive, that's carbon. We have inanimate things, that's rocks and stones. There's no carbon in that, but there's uranium. And we can date rocks because uranium degrades at a known rate. So if you go into a rock and you take out the uranium and you say, well, that uranium, we can determine that uranium is 3 million years old because of the way it degrades. And it's a bit like a photon of light, too, in that sense. So, I want to make something clear. Thomas is right. You're right in the sense that you go back in time far enough, there's a lot we don't know, but there's a lot we do know. And we need to accept that what we do know has been proven. But what we don't know, we will try to answer. And what you're trying to put your finger on is the idea that we don't know if there was a point where it all began. No, but we're moving in that direction in understanding that that's how it began based on the available evidence. And that's when we say something's a fact, Ramon. If you've ever been on jury duty, you would have experienced this thing called reasonable doubt. And when you have certainty beyond a reasonable doubt, that's when you convict somebody and say, yes, it's true. But there may still be doubt. There's always a little bit of doubt. But we have to accept that we have so much information that we've kind of gotten past reasonable doubt, and we're in the land of almost certainty, but we're not certain. That's a fact. Things change. So we have to accept the fact at this moment that this information is leading us to conclude that there was an event 13.7 billion years ago. But you know what? Your children, your great-grandchildren, others, they may discover new things in the future that refute that theory. And that's okay. In science, good scientists, when they are being told they were wrong, they will say, a good scientist, no problem. Now we have a new theory based on this information. But a person who's very religious, they will never say they're wrong. That's a big difference in my mind. A person who's religious will always not be ready to be challenged. They will always tell you, this book, this is it. That's it. Not challengeable. Yes.
Yeah. So I just thought I'll let you know that in terms of like religious and science, I'm neutral. I don't believe that God made all of this, because someone could argue, where did God come from? Same arguments, or you could
Yes.
be made saying, where did all this energy come from?
That's true. That's what Einstein asked. But could we say and just agree that our origins are maybe something so strange and interesting that maybe there's a lot we don't know and we have to be ready to know it. And when we know it, we have to be ready to change. Is that fair? Could we agree that that's something really a kind of a fact? No? No? Okay. It's okay. It's okay. Please feel free. Please feel free at any point. I know, because you have a hijab, that you are religious.
Yeah.
And so you may disagree. Please feel you are completely respected here. Okay? And that what Muhammad said and what the Quran says about our origins is the truth. I honor that too.
Yeah, just I will try understand everything.
Okay,
This
okay.
is the first time study help.
Okay. Yes, Malachi.
I have a question. So I'm Christian now.
Okay, here we go. Yeah, good.
My question is, who says that the Big Bang was denied? Like, why can't both be correct?
This is Malachi is asking. Let me come back here and bring the most important image. I had it all ready today. And, ooh, just a second. There it is. A recent NASA image of what today is all about. And that is, we're trying to understand our true origins before we start to understand the countries and the people on this planet. We're thinking like astronauts right now. What created this? And what is our purpose on this? So Malachi has just said, could you just repeat that? You are a Christian.
Yeah. So
And could you go ahead, because the microphone is here, I'll have to repeat. Go ahead.
I'm asking, who says that the Big Bang denies God? Why can't both be mutually correct?
Well, you know, there's a pretty brilliant piece of thinking. Because listen to this. You may be right. Malachi, let me just read this Genesis one more time. Remembering that you just saw a simulation in which light and gas and brightness and heat came out of sort of darkness. And when we talk about something coming out of nothing, this is what we talk about. Well, darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God hovered over the face of the waters, and God said, let there be light. Isn't it interesting that humans, 5,000 years ago, before there was any modern science and anything that we knew of called a redshift or a Big Bang, we were already imagining light came first, and there was just darkness. And if we go further into what I was going to show you today, but I can tell you, do you know what those gases started to do, Malachi, as we began to go down through the centuries and millennia, 13 billion, 12 billion? Those gases began to come together to form stars. That's the firmament. So isn't it remarkable that the human imagination, at least in this creation story, the Buddhist or Hindu ones is different, was imagining light and then stars, not stars first, then light, light then stars. Well, that's exactly what we have in the science story. And here's now how it works, because we know the gases started, hydrogen and helium. Oxygen, by the way, will come a little bit later. So you know in the live chat, there's a thing called the gravitational force, or gravity, that pulls things together. what happened is the gases, and you saw that in the video, began to clump together. The clumping of those gases were the first stars. Stars are gas. Think of it this way, Malaga. I always do this. Whenever I'm dusting or cleaning at home, which I probably should do more, but we have someone who comes and helps, but my wife would wish I were cleaning a little more. Go under the bed. You ever notice how you get a bit of dust here and a bit of dust there. 2-3 weeks later, that dust is sort of bigger dust ball, bigger and bigger dust balls. Well, gravity is a force that we figured out much, much later, but what we now understand is those gases were being pulled together through gravity, fundamental force, and stars began to emerge. And in those stars, the stars began to generate more heat, and they began to create new elements, harder elements. But in truth, the idea of a single God and the idea of a Big Bang could absolutely coexist. And it's a great observation that you've made. And I hope that in this class, you can always feel that things can coexist. It doesn't have to be either or in this class. As someone once said to me, we're learning so much more through science today. We're learning that what God intended is so creative and so mysterious that we're very, very early on in understanding what God really did. And we have to be open to new things coming that God may be behind. Does that make sense? Yeah. But you know, if you go back into an old empire, in early societies, there were multiple gods, Malachi. There was no such thing as one single God. There was the God of the heaven, God of a good crop, God of water, God of good sex, God of an abundance of food. So just be mindful of the fact that a single God is not the only way of looking at that kind of power. Yes, Ramal.
Yeah.
Yeah, go
If I
ahead.
could just add
Yeah.
on. So I'm Buddhist.
Lovely. Go ahead. Okay, I'm glad we have. So now, Christian, soon you're going to be able to speak more. I understand now. Jew. Oh, no. Okay. Christian, Jew, Buddhist. Very good. Now we're getting a real.
Muslim.
What's that? Muslim? Yeah, Christian, Muslim, Jew, Buddhist, and any Hindu? Hindu? Gentlemen? Any? Muslim? Okay. Good. Love the. So tell us, Ramal, tell us about the Buddhist story of creation. Can you do that?
I'm not great at history.
Okay.
But so yes, I do believe in God, but a question this is something I've been debating in my head since I was very young.
Mm.
And I ask myself, where's the proof of God? Like it's all based on a belief. Like it's a conundrum I've had with myself because
Yes.
I cannot I'm very indecisive. I know that that's the reason. So I keep asking myself, where's the proof of God? Like this is all based on a belief. And then I ask myself, when someone brings up Big Bang Theory, where's the proof of where it originated from, which is what I keep trying to peg at. So right now, you could still say I'm in a conundrum, and I believe that there's a higher power because it all seems too good to be true. You know, like it's sure you could say it's evolution and us. Life has evolved to survive to the environment, but sometimes if you think about it, it just sounds too good to be true.
What's too good to be true?
How we've evolved, how everything's evolved, how we have evolved to grow limbs from simple amoeba to survive.
Can I recommend a
harsh
book?
winter.
Can I recommend a book for you to maybe
Yes,
look at?
Yeah.
There's an evolutionary biologist at the University of Chicago who's very well respected. and his book is called Why Evolution is True. Now, he, in his introduction, says something remarkable. He speaks all over. Not only does he teach. Evolutionary biology is the field that you need to be thinking more about, okay? But he's one of our better ones. He said, his name is Jerry Coyne, and he said, one afternoon, he was speaking to a group of American business executives, and he was giving them a detailed PowerPoint presentation on the evidence for evolution, going back to Charles Darwin. I'm going to talk about Charles Darwin and Alfred Russel Wallace next week, the two important biologists in this. And he had a gentleman, he said, a fairly well-known, wealthy, educated executive come up to him at the end of his presentation. And this gentleman, maybe we could think of him as a Trump-like figure, but not so criminal and corrupt. He put his arm around Jerry and he said, Jerry, I believe everything that you just said, but I still don't believe it's true. I believe all the evidence that you just presented. You've shown how the idea of Darwinian evolution through the story of genetic science and how we pass on genes in our genome, how that eventually leads to the creation of a different form of life and the limbs and the heads and everything over a long period of time works. I still don't believe you. This is a very hard thing to grapple with sometimes. It's almost like we have an emotional block when we have to deal with the reality of what we know based on what we can handle. And all I can say is a beautiful line that was given to us once by a pastor many, many years ago. The larger the island of knowledge, the longer the shoreline of wonder. The more you know, Ramal, the more you learn, the more knowledge you gain. You may not necessarily get certainty, but your wonder grows. You begin to see what Václav Havel saw. Václav Havel is the Czech president whom our prime minister quoted in his speech at Davos earlier this week. He was a playwright of the 20th century. He was imprisoned by the Soviets when they occupied Czechoslovakia, the Russians, when they had the Soviet Empire. He spent many years in jail, like Nelson Mandela in South Africa. And when he came out of jail, he was awarded eventually the presidency. And he talked about this miracle of being, miracle of existence. And he said that when human beings can recognize, he wrote an article for a magazine called The Futurist. And he said, when humans can really accept that this thing that they have on this planet is a miracle, that they're alive and they're growing and they haven't destroyed themselves yet. He said, I'm not certain, but I can tell you, the more I know, the more of a miracle it starts to seem. That's about as clear as he was. Speaking of miracles and a sense of wonder, I'd like to end with a very brief video. I haven't shown you everything today, that's for sure. But let's at least end with something that will make you think about this sense of wonder. In a nutshell, what happened was Earth was formed. After the stars were formed, 5 billion years ago, Earth was formed. Gradually, it took its present shape and it hardened. It was very hot for a while. Eventually, when you look at what started to happen on planet Earth, around 3 billion years ago, we started to see the first organisms emerge in the waters, the warm waters. And to cut a long, long story short, I'm going to jump ahead to the dinosaurs because I want to show you something that's going to blow your mind. 250 million years ago, there were these massive creatures that began to emerge on the planet. And the reason they were so huge was because there was so much oxygen on planet Earth. Oxygen was coming as a result of what we call photosynthesis. It's a byproduct of photosynthesis. As a result, we had these huge creatures. And what I'm about to show you is going to take you as close as you've ever been to a real dinosaur. I could show you pictures that we've drawn, illustrations of dinosaurs, movies, Steven Spielberg, Jurassic Park. But what you're about to look at is what was discovered by a team of researchers at the University of Saskatchewan. This piece of amber that you're looking at right now is about 90 million years old. Amber does not age quickly. Inside that amber is a dinosaur feather. Now I'm going to show you a little video from the researchers. Dinosaurs, eventually, some of them had feathers. And some of them learned how to fly. And our research is showing us increasingly that the birds you see in the sky are a branch of dinosaurs 90 to 100 million years ago. You want to see a dinosaur feather, a real feather? There it is here, but I'm going to show you in the video even more closely because it's one of the most beautiful videos you can see. And for everybody still there in the cosmos, here it is. There's the dinosaur feather from University of Saskatchewan researchers, but here's the video. And let's kill the lights again. And then after this runs, you can leave, okay? I'd love you to have this in your mind as you leave. What a sense of wonder this is. Let me go back. Pull this up. Let me kill the lights. Just a minute and a half. You're now about to see, like your dog's hair, a dinosaur feather. Turn on the lights and just finally say, you're just beginning to see the natural world. What you're going to see next one is how we humans begin to emerge. And then how something on this planet that no other creature has done. Has anyone ever seen a dinosaur feather? Have a great week. Okay?